Rainy nights have a way of making everything feel a little more unsettling. The world outside is quiet except for the sound of rain, and maybe thunder rumbling in the distance. Most of us think of it as cozy, perfect for curling up indoors. But for some people, rainy nights are when the nightmare begins. Tonight I have 3 true stories about terrifying encounters that happened on nights just like this. So grab a blanket, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't look out the window. This happened about 5 years ago when I was in college. I was driving home for the weekend after a late night shift at work. The plan was to leave as soon as my shift ended at 10 p.m. and make the 3-hour drive to my parents' house. It had been pouring rain all day, and by the time I got on the highway, it had turned into one of those relentless downpours where the wipers are on full speed and you still can barely see 10 feet ahead. The drive was miserable. Pitch black, hardly any cars on the road, just me and the sound of rain hammering against the windshield. Normally I'd listen to music, but that night I kept it quiet because something about driving through that kind of storm demanded full attention. About an hour into the trip, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Through the curtain of rain, my headlights swept across what looked like a person standing on the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Nobody would be out there in this weather. But as I got closer, there was no mistaking it. It was a man. He was tall, wearing what looked like an old gray hoodie and jeans, completely drenched and just standing there, motionless, with his back facing traffic. His head was tilted down slightly like he was staring at the ground. I drove past him, trying not to look, but I couldn't help glancing in the rearview mirror. The sight of him fading into the darkness behind me made me shiver. I told myself he must have broken down and was waiting for help, but that theory didn't sit right with me because there were no cars anywhere near him. About 10 minutes later, I saw him again. Same guy, same gray hoodie, same stance. Standing on the shoulder, head down, like before. Only this time he was on the opposite side of the road. My brain couldn't process it at first. I literally muttered, "What the hell?" out loud in my car. There was no way he could have gotten there before me unless he sprinted through the woods in the pouring rain. And even then, why? I sped up after that. Every primal instinct in my body was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Another 15 minutes passed and I started to calm down a little. Maybe it was 2 different people wearing similar clothes. That had to be it, right? Then I saw him a 3rd time. This time, he wasn't on the shoulder. He was in the middle of the damn road. Standing dead center in my lane, head still hanging low. I slammed on the brakes so hard my seatbelt locked across my chest. My car skidded a little on the wet pavement before coming to a stop about 20 feet from him. The man didn't move. He didn't even flinch from the sound of tires screeching or the blinding glare of my headlights. He just stood there, soaked, head down like some statue. My hands were shaking on the wheel. For a few seconds, I just sat there in stunned silence, trying to figure out what to do. Honk? Reverse? Go around him? Before I could decide, his head snapped up. Not slowly, not like a curious person checking who stopped. It snapped up in this unnatural, jerky motion, and for the first time I saw his face. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes. God, his eyes looked hollow. Not like he didn't have eyes, but like he had no life in them. They were just black pits reflecting my headlights. And the grin wide, ear to ear, like his jaw wasn't built to stretch that far. Then he started walking toward my car. Not running, walking, each step deliberate, slow, and heavy, like he had all the time in the world and knew I wasn't going anywhere. That broke me out of my paralysis. I threw the car into reverse and floored it, my tires spraying water as I backed up down the highway like a maniac. He kept walking, that grin never faltering, even as my car got farther away. After what felt like an eternity, I spun the wheel, turned into the opposite lane, and sped off like my life depended on it. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I was going to pass out. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. I drove the rest of the way home without stopping once, even though my gas tank was almost empty. When I finally pulled into my parents' driveway at 2 a.m., I was shaking so badly I could barely get the key out of the ignition. To this day, I have no idea what I saw out there. I've tried to rationalize it, maybe some deranged guy playing a sick prank. Maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion, but none of that explains how he kept appearing miles apart in such a short amount of time. And that face still shows up in my nightmares sometimes. This happened in 2019 during one of the worst storms I've ever experienced. I live in a small town in the Midwest, and when it rains out here, it's no joke. That night, the thunder was so loud it rattled the dishes in the kitchen, and the wind kept slamming rain against the house like someone was throwing buckets of water at the windows. I was alone that night. My husband works night shifts, and my kids were at my mom's for the weekend. So it was just me, the storm, and a Netflix show I wasn't really paying attention to. Around midnight, the power went out. That's not unusual during storms, but it still made my stomach drop a little. I don't like being alone in the dark, and this wasn't just dark, it was pitch black. No streetlights, no glow from the TV, nothing but the occasional flash of lightning lighting up the living room for half a second at a time. I got up to grab a flashlight from the kitchen drawer using my phone as a light source. While I was fumbling around, I heard something. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then it came again, a thud. A dull, heavy sound coming from the back of the house. My first thought was that something blew over outside. The storm was strong enough to knock over our patio furniture, so it wasn't far-fetched. But then I heard another sound-long, slow scraping, like something heavy being dragged across wet concrete. I froze, my hands still in the drawer. Another flash of lightning lit up the kitchen for a split second, and in that moment, I could see the sliding glass door that led to our backyard. It looked normal, closed, locked, but beyond the glass in the yard, I could make out something big and dark lying on the ground. I couldn't tell what it was, but it wasn't there earlier. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see past the patio, and every time lightning flashed, I'd catch another glimpse of that thing. I kept staring, trying to make sense of it. Was it a tree branch, a garbage can that blew over? Then it moved. I'm not exaggerating. I saw it shift just slightly, like someone adjusting their weight. My heart started pounding so hard it drowned out the storm. I grabbed the flashlight, flicked it on, and shined it through the glass. At first, the beam just reflected my own terrified face, but then it cut through the rain and landed on the thing in the yard. It wasn't a branch. It wasn't a garbage can. It was a person. They were lying on their stomach in the middle of my yard, soaking wet, with their head turned toward the house. Their eyes caught the light from my flashlight, and I swear to God, they were wide open, staring straight at me. For a few seconds, I just stood there like an idiot, trying to process what I was looking at. Then, slowly, this person started to push themselves up. Their arms looked twisted at weird angles, like they were broken, but they still managed to rise onto their hands and knees. I don't know why, but the way they moved made my skin crawl. It wasn't like a normal person trying to stand, it was jerky, uncoordinated, like their joints didn't work right. And then they started crawling toward the glass door. I dropped the flashlight. It clattered to the floor, but the beam stayed on, lighting up their soaked figure as they dragged themselves across the patio. Every time lightning flashed, I could see more detail. Their clothes were shredded, their skin pale and slick, their mouth hanging open like they were trying to speak, but no sound was coming out. I ran. I bolted for the front door, planning to get in my car and drive to my mom's house. But halfway there, I remembered my keys were in the kitchen on the counter. The kitchen where the sliding glass door was. I stopped dead in the hallway, heart slamming in my chest, trying to listen over the storm. I could still hear the scraping sound, that awful dragging noise, only now it was louder, closer. I forced myself to peek around the corner, and what I saw made me want to scream. The person, or whatever they were, was inside. The sliding door was open. I don't know how they got it unlocked, but they did. And now they were standing in my kitchen, hunched over, dripping water onto the tile. Their head was bent at this unnatural angle, like their neck couldn't hold it up, and their arms dangled like broken marionette strings. For a split second, they just stood there, staring at me with those wide, dead eyes. Then their mouth stretched into the most horrifying smile I've ever seen, too wide, Too many teeth and they started running. I didn't think. I just ran out the front door barefoot into the storm, sprinting to my car like my life depended on it, because it did. I jumped in, slammed the locks down, and peeled out of the driveway so fast I almost spun out on the wet pavement. I didn't stop driving until I was at my mom's house, crying so hard I could barely talk when I explained what happened. She wanted to call the police, but by the time they went to check, the house was empty. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing but the sliding door unlocked and my flashlight lying on the floor. To this day, I can't explain it. I don't know what that thing was or how it got into my house without making a sound, but I moved 2 months later and have never stayed home alone during a storm since. And every time it rains like that, I can't help but wonder if it's out there somewhere waiting for another dark, lonely night. This happened 3 years ago when I was living alone in a small ground floor apartment. It wasn't in a bad neighborhood or anything, but the building was old and kind of isolated. It was a rainy Saturday night, one of those relentless storms where the sky just dumps water for hours, the kind that makes you want to curl up inside and listen to the rain. That's exactly what I was doing, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching some mindless show. My phone buzzed, and it was my best friend texting to make sure I was okay because she knew how much I hate storms. I told her I was fine and even joked that the rain was sort of relaxing. God, I wish that had stayed true. Around 11 p.m., the power went out. The whole apartment went pitch black, and the TV cut off mid-scene. I groaned, grabbed my phone for light, and headed toward the kitchen to find some candles. That's when I heard it. A knock. It was soft, almost polite. At first, I thought I imagined it because the rain was pounding so loud on the roof. But then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. I froze in the kitchen trying to figure out where it was coming from. Then I realized it wasn't the front door. It was the window. My apartment only had 2 windows, one in the bedroom and one in the living room, facing the small back lot. The sound had come from the living room. I slowly peeked around the corner, using the faint glow from my phone to light the space. The blinds were closed, but I could see the faint outline of something on the other side of the glass of shadow. Someone was standing at my window. I just stood there for a few seconds, too shocked to react. Then, with trembling hands, I grabbed the blinds cord and yanked them open in one quick motion, thinking maybe it was a neighbor or someone in trouble. It wasn't. There was a man outside. He was soaked to the bone, his hair plastered to his head, wearing a dark jacket that clung to his body from the rain. But what made my blood run cold was his face, or rather, his lack of expression. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and he was smiling. Not a normal smile, but this stretched, lifeless grin like he didn't even know how to do it right. The second the blinds opened, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against the glass, smearing water across it, never breaking eye contact. I stumbled back so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. Then he spoke. His voice was muffled through the glass, but I'll never forget the words. "Can you let me in? It's so cold out here." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was glued shut. He tapped the glass again, this time harder. The fake smile never left his face. "Please, just for a little while." I finally found my voice and shouted that I was calling the police. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. While it rang, I ducked behind the kitchen counter, trying to stay out of sight. But then I heard another sound that made my skin crawl. Sliding. I peeked over the counter and my stomach dropped. He wasn't at the living room window anymore. He was at the bedroom window. I could see his silhouette through the blinds, pressed up against the glass like before. He tapped again, slow and deliberate. "Don't call them. They won't get here in time." I almost dropped the phone when the operator answered. I whispered my address and told them someone was trying to break in. They told me to stay on the line and hide somewhere safe. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat in the tub with the shower curtain pulled shut, holding my breath while the rain pounded outside and the man kept circling my apartment. I could hear him tapping on every window, every few seconds, like he was taunting me. Then his voice again, sing-song this time. I see you, why don't you see me? I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out, but I could still hear him between the thunder and the rain. Then, after what felt like forever, everything went quiet. No tapping, no voice, just the storm. I sat there in the tub, phone still clutched in my hand, whispering to the operator that he'd stopped. They told me to stay put because officers were almost there. Then, just as I started to feel the smallest bit of relief, I heard the sound that haunts me to this day. The bathroom doorknob turning. Not rattling, not banging, just slowly, silently turning. I swear my heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I pressed myself into the corner of the tub, clutching the phone so tight it hurt. The knob turned once, twice, then stopped. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps moving away. The front door slammed, and then nothing but the sound of the storm again. The cops showed up 10 minutes later. They searched the entire apartment and the surrounding area but didn't find anyone. The only evidence was a set of wet footprints on my bedroom carpet, leading from the window toward the hallway. Yes, inside. That means at some point while I was on the phone hiding in the bathroom, he got in. I didn't sleep for days after that. Hell, I barely sleep now when it rains. I moved out a week later and never went back for the rest of my stuff. And to this day, I wonder what would have happened if that bathroom door hadn't had a lock. Those were 3 real-life horror stories that all took place on rainy nights. It's easy to forget how vulnerable we are when the world outside is soaked in darkness and sound is drowned out by the storm. But these stories are a chilling reminder sometimes. What's waiting out there isn't just the rain. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true horror stories every week. And if you've ever experienced something terrifying on a rainy night, share your story in the comments below. Stay safe and keep the lights on.